They thought he was staff. That was the first mistake. Not because he corrected them, not because he caused a scene, but because he didn't. He simply nodded, took the wine glass handed to him with an entitled flick of the wrist, and stood there silent. The woman who gave it to him never even looked into his face. She just assumed the crisp white shirt, the absence of a name tag. The calm way he carried himself, he must have been hired help. Not someone worthy of eye contact. Certainly not someone worth remembering. Julian Reyes had been in that hotel 1,000 times, but that night was different. He wasn't behind a boardroom table. He wasn't speaking at an investor meeting. He was standing alone at the edge of the grand ballroom, watching people sip cocktails and judge the world by shoes and surnames. And none of them knew that he owned the very floor beneath their designer heels. The event was a celebration of legacy, a 30-year anniversary gala for a prominent investment group, the kind of place where people only shook hands with those whose family names had entries on Wikipedia. Julian's name never printed, never mentioned. That was by design. He liked to stay in the background, to watch, to remember. But tonight, something shifted, because tonight he had come without the mask. No suit, no assistance, no announcement of arrival. He had walked in quietly, wearing a clean white shirt and a vintage watch his father once gave him. His hair slightly curled from the city's humidity, his eyes sharp, but patient. No one stopped him. No one greeted him. They didn't think he was a guest. They didn't think he was anyone at all. At first, he didn't mind. He had grown up invisible, the son of a hotel janitor, a boy who knew how to move through spaces without making noise. He had built his empire on the silence that came from being overlooked. But this time, the silence felt different. A man near the bar snapped his fingers and pointed at the empty wine bucket. Julian raised an eyebrow. The man didn't notice. He was too busy laughing about how hard it is to find good help these days. Julian picked up the bucket anyway, not out of obedience, out of memory, because once, not long ago, someone had done the same for him. Not in this ballroom, not in this city, but in another hotel, far less glamorous. He had been 17, soaked from rain, hungry, and a tired waiter with aching hands had slipped him a warm meal when no one else dared look at him. He had never forgotten the man's name. And now, by standing here decades later, watching an entire room of power and privilege mistake dignity for service, Julian felt something inside him tighten. Not in anger, in clarity. He wasn't here to shame them. He was here to remind himself why he built what he built, and to decide who it was meant to serve. Behind him, the music swelled, glasses clinked. A woman brushed past him and muttered, "Excuse me, waiter." As if he were in the way of her evening, he smiled gently. They still didn't know, but they would, and not in the way they expected, not with press, not with outrage, with presence, the kind of presence that doesn't demand attention. It earns it by never leaving again. Because sometimes the most powerful man in the room is the one you never saw coming. If this story already moved something inside you, there's more coming. This is not just about one night, it's about what happens when quiet dignity meets blind assumptions. Subscribe to Heart Stories so you won't miss the truth that unfolds in next part. Julian Reyes didn't build a life out of revenge. He built it out of remembrance. That night at the gala, as he stood beneath the chandeliers his company paid for, watching people mistake him for a nameless staffer, his mind wasn't filled with fury. It was filled with echoes, quiet, persistent memories that had never left. Memories of plastic trays, of closed doors, of being 17 and invisible, before the Forbes lists and the hotel acquisitions, before the tailored suits and private meetings with mayors. Julian had once slept 3 nights in a city bus terminal with nothing but a duffel bag and a rejection letter from home. He had come out to his family 3 days after his high school graduation. He hadn't even finished the sentence when his uncle stood up from the kitchen table and told him he could find somewhere else to experiment. His father didn't say anything, just looked away. That silence stayed with him longer than any insult ever could. So he left. Not with a plan, just with breath in his lungs in a name he refused to shrink. He scrubbed dishes in diners, slept in libraries when it rained, took community college classes one semester at a time. He was never the loud one, never the type to shout, but he never forgot. One night, exhausted, hungry, and too proud to beg, he wandered into a small hotel lobby just to warm up. He sat quietly in the corner near the back exit, pretending to be waiting for someone. He hadn't eaten since the day before. A man in a faded uniform and tired shoes approached him. He didn't ask questions, just handed Julian a plate wrapped in foil. No small talk, no conditions, just a soft smile and a whisper. Not everyone forgets you. His name tag read Luis. Julian never saw him again. He asked around weeks later, but Luis had already left. Old guy, they said, moved somewhere south. No one remembered much about him, but Julian did. He remembered the warmth of that food, the way it tasted more like hope than dinner. He remembered how Luis looked at him, not with pity, not with suspicion, but with recognition. That moment didn't save his life. It reminded him it was worth saving. Julian kept that name with him not as an obsession, but as a compass. Whenever he stepped into a meeting room where no one looked like him, or sat at a table where no one listened to him, he remembered the man who didn't need a reason to show kindness. Years later, when Julian had enough to invest, he didn't chase skyscrapers. He bought hotels, quiet, aging ones, places that people overlooked just like he had been. He redesigned the spaces, not just with style, but with philosophy. No mandatory dress codes, no facial recognition systems, no premium guests, only lounges. He told every manager the same thing. The person who walks in may not wear gold, but they may carry more dignity than this building ever held. Treat them like that. Most of the staff followed his lead. Some didn't. And the hotel that hosted the gala, it was his first purchase years ago, a landmark no one believed he could afford. He made the down payment quietly, changed nothing publicly. He let the staff stay, let the name remain, but rewrote every policy underneath it because he wanted to see what stayed the same. And that's why he had chosen to attend the gala unannounced, unescorted, unbranded, to see who the room truly served when no one was watching. He watched the way Noah, the young receptionist, shifted nervously when guests barked orders. He noticed the staff who smiled only at guests wearing watches worth more than their salaries. He saw the systems, the quiet hierarchy, dressed in etiquette, still alive. And he remembered Luis, who served without knowing who he was helping. Luis, who acted not because someone told him to, but because kindness didn't need permission. Julian had power now, but power means nothing unless it's used to protect those who never had it. That night, after the gala ended and the last flute of champagne was cleared, Julian didn't go home. He sat in the empty lobby, beneath the same light fixtures he had once admired as a boy, and then he pulled out a small black notebook. On the first page, he wrote 4 words: "It's time for Luis." This wasn't just a memory, it was the beginning of something. The past wasn't there to haunt him, it was there to instruct him. The problem wasn't just the woman who mistook him for staff, it was the system that taught her to do it. Julian Reyes sat in the empty boardroom the next morning, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug. Not because there wasn't fine china, but because that's what Luis used to drink from. He could still picture the man's weathered hands wrapped around a cup like this, steady, unapologetic. And now, in this same hotel, Luis would have never been allowed to dine in. Julian was about to rewrite everything. He had spent the night combing through employee files, guest reports, complaints that never got escalated. What he found wasn't shocking, it was expected. Guests who spoke with accents were more likely to be redirected to back tables in the restaurant. Men with earrings or painted nails had higher incident flags in the concierge system, usually under vague labels like disruption or inappropriate tone. And young, well-dressed Black and Asian professionals were consistently offered valet service last, even when they arrived first. None of it was written in policy. All of it was practiced like gospel, because that's how systems like this survive, not in loud statements, but in silent habits. Julian called in the senior manager, a man named Garrett Sloan, polished, articulate, Harvard Business School, the kind of man who shook hands with force and addressed Julian as sir, even when he wasn't looking. Garrett sat across from him, confident but slightly guarded. Julian opened the meeting with a single question. "Tell me who this huddle is for." Garrett blinked. "Excuse me, who is this place designed to welcome?" Garrett cleared his throat. "Well, our brand vision aligns with elite experiences, high net worth guests, destination clients who expect world-class." Julian held up a hand. "Stop." He opened a file and slid it across the table. Inside were transcripts from the front desk, all from 1 week, complaints from guests who felt invisible, an email from Noah, the young receptionist, written at midnight the night of the gala, apologizing for not speaking up. Julian didn't say a word, just let the silence stretch. Then, quietly, "You've run this place like a showroom, Garrett, for people who already believe they belong. But that's not hospitality. That's selective access." Garrett's tone shifted. "With respect, we've maintained the highest standards of service." Julian cut him off. "Standards that punish anything unfamiliar. Voices too loud, clothes too simple, love too visible." He stood, walked to the window overlooking the courtyard, then turned back. "Do you know how many times I've been asked to leave a room I paid for?" But Garrett didn't respond. Julian didn't wait. "I was mistaken for janitorial staff at a conference I sponsored, told to try the side entrance at a restaurant I own, and last night your team offered me a seat near the kitchen because I wasn't wearing a tux." Garrett looked stunned. "I had no idea." "Sir, that's the problem." Julian sat back down. "I'm not angry. I'm just done pretending this is acceptable." He reached into his jacket and placed a new blueprint on the table. It wasn't for another building. It was for a restructure, hiring, training, guest handling protocols, AI-assisted bias flagging, anonymous employee feedback systems, a review panel with veto power on promotions led by frontline staff, not executives. Garrett skimmed the documents, his face tightening. "This is ambitious." Julian leaned forward. "No, this is overdue, because change doesn't begin with apologies. It begins with accountability." And Julian wasn't just here to reclaim a table. He was here to dismantle a throne in time. He gave Garrett a choice: stay and lead this shift, or step aside for someone who knew what it meant to be excluded. Garrett didn't answer right away, but Julian already knew. Later that day, in the staff dining room, Julian posted a single-page memo. No letterhead, no corporate jargon, just this: "If you've ever been told you're too loud, too different, too much you belong here, this hotel is yours. 2. We're rewriting the rules." It was signed Julian Reyes, not CEO, just someone who remembers. It would have been easy to name the hotel after himself. Everyone expected it. Julian Reyes, billionaire investor, could have stamped his surname on the marble entrance, turned his initials into a brand, carved his signature above every velvet chair and crystal lamp. But legacy, real legacy, isn't about being remembered. It's about remembering. 3 days after the gala, Julian called an all-staff meeting. No catering, no suits, no cameras. Just a quiet morning in the same ballroom where he had once been mistaken for someone without a seat. The room filled slowly. Servers in uniforms, front desk clerks, maintenance workers with name tags faded from years of wear, and Noah, the young receptionist, standing in the back, eyes wide, notebook in hand. Julian didn't take the podium. He stood at floor level. Among them, "I want to talk to you," he began. "Not as your employer, but as someone who knows what it feels like to be unseen." He told them about the night he slept behind a vending machine, about the bus station and the foil-wrapped meal, about Luis, the man who gave him something warm to eat. and something even warmer to hold on to. I don't know where he went after that. I never got the chance to say thank you. I don't even know his last name. He paused, but I remember his eyes. The way he handed me that plate, not like I was poor, not like I was broken, but like I was enough. The staff said nothing, but something in the air shifted, a heaviness loosening, like someone had opened a window no one knew was locked. Julian continued, "We tell ourselves that hotels are about service, but they're not. They're about dignity. They're about how we treat people when no one's watching, when we don't know their story, their wealth, their power." He stepped aside and uncovered a small brass plaque on the wall behind him. It read, "The Lewis Hotel, for the man who offered warmth when the world went cold." For everyone who was told they didn't belong, gasps rippled through the room. Julian didn't smile. He didn't cry. He simply nodded. "This place will no longer carry my name," he said, "because I don't need it to. But Luis deserves to be known." The hotel's new name wasn't just a tribute. It was a reminder, a permanent acknowledgement that every person who steps through those doors in heels or work boots, in designer coats or secondhand shirts, brings value. Not because of how they look, but because they're here. Julian announced a scholarship in Luis's name for LGBTQ+ youth entering the hospitality industry, free housing, mentorship, and direct job placements across his portfolio of properties. He appointed Noah as the new guest relations lead, telling him, "You saw something wrong and wanted to fix it. That's leadership." Noah choked on his thank you. Later that evening, Julian walked the hallways of the hotel alone, room by room, floor by floor. The same halls he once vacuumed as a teenager working night shifts under another name. He stopped outside a suite overlooking the city skyline. On the desk inside sat a framed reservation log, the one where his name had once been overwritten. But now, beneath glass, it sat next to another frame, a black and white photo of a man in a faded uniform handing a plate of food to a boy too skinny, too scared, and too young to be forgotten. The image had been recreated by one of the staff artists. No one knew exactly what Luis looked like, but they imagined him with kindness in his eyes and tired hope in his smile. Julian stood there a long time, not as a mogul, not as a guest, but as someone who had finally given back what he had once been given without question. Presence. That night, the hotel exterior lit up with new letters. No grand ceremony, no press release, just a quiet glow, the Lewis Hotel, and beneath it, in smaller font, "We see you." In the months that followed, the Luis Hotel became something more than a building. It became a mirror, not the kind that flatters, the kind that reflects exactly what we choose to see or not see. Guests still arrived in black cars. Luggage still clicked across the lobby floor, but something in the air had shifted. A quiet alertness, a gentle curiosity, a softness in how people paused, looked, listened. On the front desk now stood a small sign. "We greet every guest by name because no one should feel like a shadow." And beneath it, a photo, a recreation of that moment, a man handing a plate to a boy, framed beneath the words "Inspired by Luis, sustained by kindness." Julian didn't hold press conferences. He didn't give interviews. But stories leaked as they always do when dignity disrupts performance. An influencer checked in under an alias. He was assigned a basic room without special treatment. He later praised the staff online for treating him like everyone else and meaning it. A retired teacher visited the city for her first solo trip. She cried when the hotel concierge offered to walk her to the bookstore next door, just because. A young trans guest left a note. "This is the first place I didn't feel like I had to explain myself. Thank you." Julian read every note. Some he kept in a drawer, some he framed, and some he carried with him, quiet reminders that buildings can hold more than weight. They can hold memory and meaning. Luis never returned, but he never needed to, because the meal he gave became something greater than warmth. It became a foundation, a standard, A legacy passed not through lineage or wealth, but through presence, shared at the exact moment someone needed to be seen. Julian often sat in the lounge by the courtyard, watching people come and go. He no longer cared who recognized him, because what mattered now wasn't being known. It was building a room where others could finally belong. One afternoon, a new staff member approached him nervously. "Sir, I just wanted to ask." Why Luis Julian looked at him for a long moment. Because he saw me, before I had anything, before I was anyone. And that changed everything. Has someone ever really seen you before the world did? Share that story in the comments. Your voice matters more than you think. And if this journey moved you, if it reminded you that quiet actions carry the loudest echoes, then subscribe to Heart Stories. We'll keep telling the stories that don't just entertain, they restore, they reveal, they remember.